At the beginning of Fear and Hunger Termina, the majority of the contestants are out of their depth, and at a total disadvantage when it comes to facing the horrors of the town, with even magically gifted and knowledgeable characters like Osar, Marina and Samurai not really equipped to deal with the nightmares of the Termina festival. Of all the contestants, only one seems to not only be prepared for Preheville, but totally at ease being there, and that contestant is August, a well-dressed older gentleman who doesn't seem in the slightest bit concerned that he's somehow found himself in a nightmare. He doesn't say much during the initial train conversation, but we can talk to him after, and he's probably the friendliest person we talk to besides Olivia. But in conversation, August will drop subtle hints that he knows what we'll see should we travel to Preheville. Nice weather to enjoy the outdoors. Just don't go wandering too far, my friend, okay? We ask him what brings him to Preheville, and he says, nothing much. A twist of fate perhaps. But if we're playing Isabella, August will have a lot more to say. From his dialogue, it seems that August has lived a nomadic lifestyle of non-stop travel and training, and while his family roots trace back to Aldergard, Abella's homeland, and the reason he opens up to her in the first place, he barely knows the land himself. Though talks about it in a similar way that Tolkien might describe the Shire, he tells us that he also has 2 children, though they live settled lifestyles. Whatever compelled his family to be nomads for generations is unknown, but August wants to break that cycle, and at this point we're able to infer that he'll be able to do that in Preheville. After this conversation, we'll next see August effortlessly scaling the gates of Preheville, leaving us alone to fend off the horrors of Old Town. He salutes us though, so there's that. Cheers mate. There is a scene where if we're crucified and August is still alive, he'll save the characters' lives and lead the Old Towners away, though with their legs cut off, it's doubtful they'll ever be the same again. Except for Olivia, who just gets in a wheelchair. She's fine. Over the next few days, we'll find August casually hunting the monsters of Preheville, and in the Maiden Forest, or parkouring. Oh lord, give parkouring skill in the update. It's unclear what exactly he's up to. If we try talking to him after we've left the train, he's polite but never personable, keeping the conversation short. And we find August travelling all over the city, and unlike the other contestants, it's likely that August has scouted pretty much all of Preheville before the end of day 1. On the night of day 1, we find him on the eastern part of Preheville, after he's already established his camp in the far west of the map in the Maiden Forest. Talking to August during these times won't yield too much information, but he does seem to be enjoying himself at the very least. On the morning of day 3, if we find August with Karen in our party, she'll confront him, drawing her gun and accusing him of keeping a diary, detailing his fellow contestants, and keeping tabs on their mental states. Not only does this confirm that August has been travelling all over the city with ease, to the point where he can document his fellow contestants, but also that he may have knowledge of what the Termina festival is. One's mental state and will is crucial in staving off the moon god's gaze, with characters like Hemric, Marco, and Samurai breaking due to a particular stressful factor. During this encounter, Karen will either be seriously injured or August will be dead, depending on player action or lack thereof. By the way, how the fuck is August keeping a whole ass bow in his pocket? Is he also a new god? We're never able to find the diary. It can't be looted or stolen from August, and Karen will claim to have hidden it under the piano at the Preheville Barp. Though should we go there, the diary will be mysteriously gone, leaving Karen looking guilty. And if we tell Karen that we don't believe her, she leaves the party. Karen is almost definitely telling the truth here, by the way. Without going into detail right now, there's a certain piece of information August would have no knowledge of without following and documenting the player. On the night of day 3, we'll find him at his campsite, having slit his own throat rather than succumb to moonscorching. Along with Pav, he is the only contestant that doesn't have a moonscorched form. It's a testament to his willpower that he was able to hold on for so long. But this isn't the only outcome for August, and to really put his willpower into context, on the evening of day 3, we can tell him that we saw the Kaiser at the temple site. I think I've seen the Yellow King here. Is that so? Surely you're just getting too immersed with that old tale of mine. But let's say you did see him. Where would this have happened? In the temple district? I did visit that place recently but saw nothing. If you'd excuse me, I just remembered something urgent. After this conversation, we'll find August at the Temple District on night 3, having killed Tanaka. Every other time we see August, he ignores us, and continues going about his business. If we talk to him, he's always friendly, but he never initiates a conversation, except for this encounter, where if we try to walk away, he says, "I didn't get to meet the Yellow King. That's a shame." I'm at a loss, to be honest. I'm running out of time, and I've got 0 results. None of it matters. I gave it my all, but it seems like there's only one way to get any answers. I've decided to take part in the festivities. I'll play by their rules, and from here we'll be in a fight to the death with the old man, and he's not as tough as he looks. He's actually easy pickings as long as he doesn't blow your head off with his bow. In either situation, August will ultimately fail his mission. A sad end for the old warrior, to be sure. It's hard to really get a read on August. He does seem earnestly well-mannered, and should we be able to read minds, we'll hear this from him. I feel sorry for these people, but I have a mission to finish. I can't get attached to anyone, not in the slightest. His mission defines his every action in Prelude, exploring the city, abandoning the other contestants, keeping a diary, injuring Karen, and even eventually killing Tanaka. It's all done in the name of his mission, but what exactly is it? Why is August here? If we ask him, he'll tell us that his being in Prelude is just a twist of fate. A clear lie. We know it must have something to do with the Yellow King, given the only time the player can outright influence his actions is if we saw the Kaiser attack Pav at some point. On the evening of day 3, we find him by his campfire, the only time he's really settled since arriving in Prelude. In a few short hours, the festival will be over, and at this point all of the contestants know how it will end, August especially, and with little time left to complete his mission. He tells us a story. There was once a time of great turmoil. The world had been in a state of constant conflict and sickness for as long as people remembered. People blamed all the possible powers above them, the kings and sultans of the time, the so-called new gods, the gods of old, everyone but themselves. It was close to a breaking point for the entire civilized world, and it would have been just that if it wasn't for the glimmer of hope at the end of the tunnel. There was a prophecy about a man with golden locks that would shepherd mankind out of the darkness. And it just so happened that a man with similar features was rising up in fame in Central Europa. The man promised a just world, but the hierarchy of the old world would not be shaken with mere words. The man had to find strength that would outmatch the vast armies of the kings and sultans of the old kingdoms. That kind of strength is not easy to come by, so he did anything and everything it took to get that very power. He made a lot of villainous moves to pursue his agenda. One could say he came close to the same evil he promised to crush, constantly assuring himself that the ends justify the means. Ultimately, the man did get the strength he so yearned, but at what cost? In his pursuit, he fed the darkness of the world, enough so that a new deity was born, the god of fear and hunger. Regardless, people found a new direction, and that didn't end up being the prophesized man. The man did re-emerge from the darkness, but by then the world had already found a new savior from the deity. As his pursuits turned out to be meaningless, he slowly started to spiral into madness. His frustrations would slowly show themselves in rising hostility and violence. Without the grand ends he envisioned, he only came to be known for his means. Ultimately, he came to be known as the Yellow King of Madness, finalizing his transformation to a true villain. They say that in his madness, the man believed his own prophecy to the point that it would not let him die until he would fulfill that destiny. A prophecy can be like Chekhov's gun. It has to be fulfilled before things can be laid to rest. Do you think he will get his happy ending? Finally, we reply, he doesn't sound like the learning type. I'm with you there. If anything, it's a sad tale, and it only gets sadder for the people whose lives he has ruined in the process. August is clearly recounting the rise of the god in the first game, and the way he tells it, it doesn't sound so much like historical fact, but rather a fable. A mythology used by August and his family to continue whatever quests they're all looking to complete. Interestingly, the tale doesn't offer any evidence of what happened to the god in the dungeon, or whether or not he died and was resurrected, though August seems to believe that the god continues to exist because of the prophecy, and suggests that the god's mere belief that he has a prophecy to complete is the reason he's able to defy all natural laws and continue living for centuries. After this story, we can tell him about spotting the Kaiser, and from here August will head straight there, but still won't be able to find the object of his hunt, unless of course the player opens the path to him. The Kaiser is in the White Bunker, and if we reach him before the end of the first day, unprompted, August will show up. Kaiser, we finally meet. You recognize these arrows, I presume? Good. then you understand this has been a long time coming. Just for the record, cutscene Kaiser clears the actual boss we fight. It's unlikely though that August will get to this point, as it only happens if we confront the Kaiser on day 1, though it is clear evidence that August was keeping an eye on us. To get to the White Bunker before the end of day 1, the player character has to navigate all of Prehyville in a single day, and with August basically doing the same thing. You probably saw the player multiple times, and realised that we were making actual progress towards something, but as I said, it's unlikely August made it to the Kaiser. The canon outcome of the game, I would speculate, took place over the 3 days, for dramatic effect if nothing else. Ironically though, if August had allowed himself to get attached to people, especially the likes of Abella and Karen, who had connections with the NLU, August would have been privy to the White Bunker, and would have been able to activate the telelectroscopes himself, instead of doing evil dives and being a creepy old beggar. But there is the question of why does August want to kill the Kaiser so bad? While August hunts Lagarde, it should be said that he doesn't have any interest in the logic god, or the grand scheme. He talks about the god of fear and hunger briefly, but only as a way to dunk on Lagarde. August's motivation then is far more personal. Ragnarvolder is one of the 4 protagonists of the first Fear and Hunger game, hailing from the kingdom of Oldergard. He arrives at the dungeon after Lagarde had his village destroyed and killed his family. Ragnarvolder is here to retrieve the Cube of the Depths, though killing Lagarde is clearly something of a secondary goal for the man. In his S-ending, it's said that Ragnarvolder hunts the beasts of the world, launching a one-man crusade against the darkness, with Ragnarvolder harbouring a specific grudge against the god of the depths, though his ending image seems to depict him killing an Iki Terso, possibly suggesting Ragnarvolder grew to detest all of the gods. Though in his S-ending, he notably doesn't have Moonless with him, while in Termina the wolf is a clear ally of August, the man who in some fashion is clearly related to the Outlander. If we try to intimidate August in battle, he'll say this: "What an ugly tone you've got there. I bet you've been practicing that intimidating tone in front of a mirror, am I wrong? Too bad I've seen horrors beyond comprehension on my travels. No man can intimidate me at this point. But don't fret, I'm sure your voice might have had an effect on me when I was a wee lad." It seems that part of the training August and his family have endured involved fighting the monsters of the world, just like Ragnarvolder dedicated his life to it in his S-ending. I do wonder if Ragnarvolder's descendants travelled to Vinland. The land is legendary for being filled with monsters, with the Sergals hailing from the continent originally. We also know that in the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger, Rags befriended the cave wolf Moonless. In Termina, we fight her, and she's gotten bigger since the last time we saw her. In Fear and Hunger, the Outlander and Moonless don't have any unique scenes to themselves, but Moonless does have a scene with the girl, even defending her in the void. And Moonless as a creature, touched by the darkness, would have fallen under the influence of the Depth God, who is now more or less the god of fear and hunger, making me wonder if the girl favours Ragnarvolder's and August's mission to put Lagarde out of his misery once and for all. On Moonless's body are the swords Eastern Steel and Miasma. Miasma specifically is an interesting addition here. The sword is able to drive people into a violent madness should they wield it for too long, and its acquisition might explain how Ragnarvolder was able to survive the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger in the first place. Miasma is actually set to have more lore in the update, so perhaps I'll have more to offer on it then, but for now I would speculate that the reason Miasma is sheathed in the flesh of Moonless is because the cave wolf for whatever reason is resistant to its influence. Before we can kill Moonless though, August does a superhero landing and stops us, thank God. Easy girl, easy. You did good. These ones are not the enemy, they're friends. She is an old family acquaintance. And if we're able to read his mind, we hear more like a sibling even. Now this line of dialogue could indicate that Moonless travelled with Ragnarvolder's descendants, essentially becoming part of the family, with Ragnarvolder and Moonless both being characters without a pack at the beginning of Fear and Hunger. Although I do have to wonder if Ragnarvolder is actually August. It sounds ridiculous at face value, but there is some circumstantial evidence that suggests it might be the case. In the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger, some of the dialogue indicates that Enki and Ragnarvolder become friends, or the closest to friends either of these two weirdos could have. And Enki was something of an apprentice to Nosramus, who knew the secrets of extending one's life. And if he passed that knowledge on to Enki, there's no reason to think he in turn couldn't have passed that knowledge on to Ragnarvolder. August's green arrows are unique. Osar will tell us that they affect his ability to cast magic, and such a creation you'd think would be beyond Ragnarvolder. While he wasn't an ignorant man by any means, magic in Fear and Hunger is something that requires vigorous study and devotion. but can still end up destroying its user, mentally or physically, even under the best of circumstances. In the first game, the Hexen table is used to curse items, basically enchanting them, giving them the ability to cause otherworldly damage. The arrows August uses have an opposite effect, where they diminish the ability of the target, but I do wonder if their creation requires the same methodology, and the only character in the dungeon who likely had any knowledge of the Hexen due to his upbringing and training would have been Enki. We also know that Enki travelled to the dungeon with the intention of usurping Legaard's position as the Chosen One, and while the two never develop a specific animosity, when you look at how both Enki and Legaard interact with the grand scheme, there are clear philosophical differences between the two, with Enki striving to learn about the lore of the world and the old gods and ultimately sharing it, whereas Legaard seeks to change the status quo without fully understanding it. So I would speculate that Enki and Ragnarvolder came to an understanding on the topic of Legaard, and that the two have a relationship somewhat reminiscent to Nosramus and the Knight in the first game. Another explanation for Ragnarvolder's possible longevity though might be vampirism. There are several references in Fear and Hunger Termina to the existence of vampires. We also know that Donovan has been accused of being a vampire, and may have achieved some form of longevity like Nosramus. Though, when August confronts the Kaiser, he says, "Kaiser, we finally meet." This line clearly indicates that the two characters haven't met before, which on the surface discredits the theory that August is Ragnarvolder, but it's actually possible that Legaard and Ragnarvolder didn't meet in the Dungeon of Fear and Hunger at all. Ragnarvolder's main motivation was to obtain the Cube of the Depths. Killing Legaard is a secondary concern for him, and even after Ragnarvolder's attained the cube, he seems more preoccupied with purging the influence of the Depth God from the dungeon, and if he were to be successful in such an endeavour, it would explain why Nashra warns Osar at the beginning of the game to be careful of the man, because he knows full well what he's capable of. Osar and August have a confrontation off-screen, and we find Osar pierced by green arrows. Though Osar won't identify August as his attacker, and won't do anything should we encounter the old man. But this attack on Osar might indicate that Ragnarvolder may have viewed Nashrar as an enemy as well. In Termina, Nashrar is so tunnel vision fixated on Legaard that we don't get too much of his perspective on other contemporary events or developments, nor does he ever reflect on the four dungeon dwellers who changed history. But having said all that, the Ragnarvolder equals August theory is a bit of a reach. An interesting reach, but a reach nonetheless. Incidentally, my New Year's resolution is to make at least one video where I don't become WD tinfoil. My other theory then would be that Ragnarvolder, after leaving the dungeon, and believing Legaard to be dead or lost to the void, would one day learn of his return. In the sea ending of Fear and Hunger, where we bow to the Yellow King, and he lets us leave the dungeon, after decades of living in paranoid isolation, the Yellow King will return, and begins leading a new campaign across the globe. I think then that the Outlander found out about Legaard's survival, but was too old to do something himself, or that he did try and attack Legaard and lost, and from that moment he raised his family with the sole intent of one day laying the Yellow King low. After all, Ragnarvolder, better than anyone, understands what pain and misery can be caused by Legaard's ambition, an ambition that would have only grown in the void, and we know from recent history that Legaard hasn't changed his tactics. He's still building his new world on a foundation of corpses. August's campfire story comes across as something he's had to hear over and over again, and interestingly, August seems to feel sorry for Legaard, whereas Ragnarvolder felt nothing but rage. The last time we saw him anyway. August does offer some interesting insight into how an ascended god is created though. In his pursuit, he fed the darkness of the world, enough so that a new deity was born, the god of fear and hunger. August is saying then that it was Legaard's campaign and the massive amount of casualties that followed that awoke the power of the god of the depths. The Dungeon of Fear and Hunger, while being a nexus point of the god's power, may not have always been quite as bad as when we found it in the first game. And from Rudimer's journal, it seems that the dungeon wasn't always a horrific nightmare. Well, I mean, it was, but instead of hideous monsters, we just had torture instead. Without the grand ends he envisioned, he only became known for his means. And here August describes the Yellow King as someone to whom the ends justify the means. And we actually know for a fact that this is true. In fact, Legaard's big pitch to Dars in the first game for why he did everything he did is that he and he alone is able to bear the burden of committing great sins, to push mankind forward in a positive way, and it's clearly an attitude he continues to hold as the Yellow King. All in all, I believe August is the ancestor of Ragnarvolder, though I do think Ragnarvolder and Enki forged some kind of alliance, and that there was a mutual agreement to take Legaard down, which is how August has the green arrows, and how he and his family have intimate knowledge of the dark monsters of the world. It's a grim duty that the line of Ragnarvalda has to endure. In any case, August seems like he's trying to break the cycle of vengeance, albeit in his own way. His own sons aren't nomads like he is. Instead, they're raised in Voland, in what is apparently a stable environment, and he's come to Prehyville alone, apparently not willing to drag any of his kin into the conflict, and even attempting to dissuade the player from braving the horrors of Prehyville. He plans to kill the Kaiser, and he plans on doing it alone. There is the question of what happens to August should he survive Termina, and I think the answer is simple: he doesn't. When August came to Prehyville, it was a one-way trip. The Kaiser is always surrounded by vast armies and defences, and his arrival in Prehyville presented a rare opportunity for August to face the man, basically one-on-one. But even in his vulnerability, the Kaiser is a god walking the earth, tanking bullets and arrows with ease. And no matter what, August will fail to finally slay the Kaiser, though at the very least, mayhaps his own children will finally be free from prophecy, from duty, and from the Yellow King of Madness.